I'm back. Well, actually I'm back from Dallas. Back to sunny old, rainy old England. And yeah, while I was out there, I bought a few bits and pieces, you know, second-hand stuff actually, because I know it makes no difference whether it's new or second-hand for some of this review stuff that I do. And you know, I've always had this this want to get some more wah pedals, and as you can see, I got some. But this is all about this review. It's all about the Crybaby Wah pedal from its inception all them years back, and I don't go back to the earliest one, all the way through to the modern stuff. I've got 4 really quite modern pedals and 4 pedals that sort of go over the years in one way or another. Yeah. In fact, on the old ones, I've got a 71, a 75, a 94, a 2009. Then we move on to the newer stuff. The newer stuff's just as interesting as the older stuff, and you'd be amazed at the difference between this old one here, hanging off the table, and these other ones. Quite a massive change, and not what you would expect. But we'll come to that later. Oh, one thing. This one here, this EVH pedal, yeah. I got this off a guy named Marcus Pryor. Hey Marcus, how's it hanging? And he's from Samash in Dallas, number 65, 10838 North Central Expressway, Dallas, Texas 75231. Just in case you want to go and say hello, and he'll do you a deal. I'm sure he will. Give me a deal. I'm like you. Yeah. So, great pedal. We'll come back to that later. Oh, it's barely that one. Now, just before we get down to business, I'm going to talk about what reviews are going to be coming up next. I've got a couple of, well, pretty simple reviews, but they're not so simple in reality. And one of them is, I went up my local guitar store, Music Store Pro. The Music Store, it says here, it's Music Store Pro. Anyway, I went up there to get a set of strings, something we all do. Yeah, I ended up with a bag full. Get out of here. The reason I ended up with a bag full is we've all been there. We've all been up there and looked at the strings and wondered why you can get £3 strings or £30 strings for a set. I thought, no, I won't buy them. Or maybe you did. And I'm going to explain why or why not you were on the ball. That should be an interesting review later. Oops, where'd that come from? Yeah, that'll be another review also. But it is a Clon Centaur. Or Clone Centaur. I call it a Clon Centaur. A very controversial pedal. And absolutely, they aren't getting any cheaper these days, I can tell you that much. Very uncommon, and is it really worth it? I got this one from a guy at Guitar Centre, again in Dallas. That's his band. Supernova, it says here, Remnant. Yeah, well, it is. Robbie Gustin. Hey Robbie. It was good to see you. Anyway, that's later, and I'm sure that millions of people will be harping on about how junk that is for the money, or how brilliant it is for the money. But we shall see. Let's get the Tony Mckenzie view of it. Anyway, enough of all that frivolousness for now. Let's look at these pedals. What I'm actually going to do is flip them over in order. And then we can take a quick, close look inside each ear, and I'll show you another couple of things, and we can go from there. Yeah, each one of these pedals actually is different, every single one of them, including these first 4. That's weird. Well, they might be sort of similar, but they're not as similar as you might think. So, you know, getting a vintage, it's a bit like wine. You get a vintage one, it might be a bit better than the later vintage. We shall see later, because we're going to hear every one of these. Oh, and by the way, just one thing. This Zakk Wylde one, there he is. I did a modification on this and I just changed just 2 resistors and turned it into a real wah pedal because the original, well, in my opinion, is a little bit too out of vocal, if you know what I mean. We'll come back to that. We'll show you what I did with that as well. Okay, so I'm going to flip them all over, like I said, and let's take a look inside. Okay, well, just as looking at the older models first, before we move through the enhanced and enticing newer models. This isn't the original base plate. I lost that in about 1970 when I was a bit younger. 1975 one, 1994 and 2009. So let's take a look through these, and we'll mention about the external cases as well a bit later on. Okay, well, here we go. If you take a look at this thing, the first thing you'll notice about it actually is that this case is thicker than the ones that go that way, the ones down there, the newer ones indeed. It has all the standard stuff that you'd expect to see, the little bit that holds this in place. You can look how worn that is. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. See how worn that is. It's had a bit of stick from me. But the main bit is this board here. That's the controller. Well, that's the wah-wah board, should I say. Let's go and take a bit of a closer look at that, because that's where you see most of the variances on these boards. Although there are many other things. This pedal, as far as I can make out, is about 1971, or maybe even 1970, or maybe even 69. Well, I think probably 71-ish. Somewhere around that time. I remember having it in the very early 70s, so there it is. It's got its inductor in there, the one that a lot of people, I guess, are looking for or want. You'll notice there's a few transistors. There's at least 2 there, I can see, and 1 or 2 other bits and pieces. Well, I'm not even sure what them are. I haven't been around that long looking at them, but you've got your resistors and the rest. Other than that, it's pretty boring. I think the thing that stands out on this one is always look at the capacitors, because they give you a good inkling of the age, I guess. Not by date or anything, but by type. Different ones get used in this Crybaby series as we move forward, and you'll soon see that. This pedal still has its original pot up here, and while it's rather scratchy these days, what happens with it, once you point it for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, scratchiness goes away. I have tried various things on it, but nothing seems to solve that. I tend to put up with it as it is. So that's the sort of 1970-71 pedal. Inside. Well, you'll notice on the outside that it says Thomas Organ Company, which was the original company that got this going, I believe. And I think the previous one we saw was also a Thomas Organ Company, but because the backplate's missing these days, it's just got a generic one on there. I couldn't actually tell you who physically made it, but I'm pretty sure it was a Thomas Organ Company. Anyway, this one, you can see there's a serial number if you can read it, but I dated that back to 1975 along with someone else. We'll flip the lid off. Clearly inside. Yeah. 75, 76. We'll call it 75 for now. Let's have a look a bit closer. Well, the first thing to notice on the 1975, pretty much like that 1971 jobby, if you look down here, you can see there's a screw and like a covering that goes around the battery. There's a battery down there. Now, if you go back and have a look on the video, the earlier one, you'll still see that same screw there, although this battery hole has long been gone. Moving a bit further forward, you can see that this board, at least, is different than the earlier board. We've still got a couple of transistors, we've got a lot of capacitors, all the bits and pieces, and lots of resistors, but the layout's, well, quite different. And that one there is a TDK. It says very clearly across the top. Whereas on the 1971 unit, I think that's pretty much the original. So there's been a bit of a change there. Also, look at the size of the thickness of this case. Now you would say that this pedal's lighter than the older original one. In fact, this pedal's probably twice the weight. So there was a massive change on the design of the housing between its early version and this version of 1975/76. Just worth knowing. So if you pick up a very, very light old pedal, then it is one. If you pick up a very, very heavy old pedal, then it isn't one. Fancy that. And once again, moving up here, you can see that it's pretty much very similar in this area that it was to the older pedal, except that I would say that this controller here is rather slightly different. I just took a close look at the back of this one, and there's virtually nothing on the back of it, and you notice that little hole, so we can put some lubricant or cleaner in there, should I say, not lubricant. All the rest remains pretty much the same, but you can see how much tighter this one is. Do it that way. Doesn't go anywhere. And this pedal's just 4 years newer, give or take, than the original one that I showed you before. So there are quite a lot of changes in this unit, far more than you think. Well, hey, here we go. Designed and manufactured by Jim Dunlop. I'll leave that on there for a sec. And also the battery's migrated to an external plate. By the way, this plate's been updated by me because the original one broke. So this is a current plate on a 1994 pedal. They call this the GCB 95. On the 1975 one, it was a 95-910511 Thomas organ. This one's got mains and indeed a CE approval, which the earlier ones simply didn't have because that didn't exist. You see, the truth is that once you move along to the Dunlop pedals, they're actually quite different. The truth is that when you look inside on this 1994 Dunlop pedal, you can see immediately that it is a very different pedal. It's the same thickness to the case as the 1975 one, and I can tell you that it weighs about the same as the 1975 one. The early one is the one that's light. But looking at it, oh well, we've still got the inductor, which seems to have changed to a no brand rather than a TDK, and I can see that there's actually 3 transistors now. Capacitors are different types and more modern and things like that. We've got the input for the voltage crammed onto the board, and the input and the output also stuck on the board these days. Well, what else can I say about it? Well, nothing really. I guess it could be electrically similar, but it is a different board, and you have to remember that it's reworked. It was probably bought by Dunlop sometime after 75 and before this 94. Well, clearly it was. Dunlop says all over it what it is. But factually, it's different. Let's take a look at the other bits on this 1994 Crybaby. Well, there it is, the top bit. This is as tight as in the 1975 one. It's either not had much stick or it just wears better, I guess. I guess it wears better. You also notice that this controller, we'll call it that, has been changed for a more modern one. In fact, it's been changed for a hot pots. There they are, I'll show you a little bit later what that's all about. A hot pot. Yeah, I always read it as hot potty, but that's the story. Okay, so that's the 1994 one. So let's move on to the 2009 one and see what's changed. Here we are, 2009 pedal. Well, it's a GCB 95, that's what it says, like the 1994 one said. It's still got its adapter, it's still got its CE approval, but now it's gained something else called Roche compliance. You'll see them in here. Because Roche came in after 1994, but not before 2009. Same bottom plate, same Dunlop electronics, all the rest of it. Doesn't say Jim Dunlop anymore, funny enough, it says Dunlop Electronics, even though the domain name's the same, I must admit. Let's take a look inside this one. Well, I guess inside the 2009 one, that it's similar to the 1994 pedal. Well, that's what you'd expect when it's the same manufacturer all the way through and all the rest. Yeah. Well, we've still got 3 transistors, we've still got an inductor. Okay, well the inductor in this one actually says Phasal on it, so whether that's a brand or a type, I don't know. It's probably a brand, but seems like they've gone to get an original Phasal inductor to put in it to charge you more. Probably. Because the price has gone up and up and up on these things over the years. There's nothing gets cheaper, and wait until you see the price on the new ones. Oh my god. Remember back in the old days of 71, 72, I was not paying a lot of money for that pedal. I don't see much that's changed in here, except that, well, nothing's changed, except that maybe the design's a bit different and it's a bit older, and this pedal's twice as heavy as the original, and that sort of thing. All that sort of thing going on, you know, with manufacturing. That's how they are. You've still got the mains in. You've got these two stuck on the board, like on the 1994 model, and the same sort of connector connecting the rest of it together. Let's just take a look at the controller further. And of course, it's exactly as you'd expect. Well, there's not a lot of play in this one either. And you notice this thing's changed a little bit, this bit that holds it in place. And we've got this newer potty again, or pots, as they call it. Potty, oh my god. I'm getting worse. So let's zoom back up top for a moment. Well, it's all very interesting once you start looking inside like we did. This original one, wow, what a difference, man. It's so light. In fact, I might take a set of scales and just show you how light it is compared to the rest. That could be a good idea, especially if you're looking for real vintage pedals, as opposed to what you might think is vintage or somebody tells you. Now, I do want to talk a few minutes about these pedals, and you know, when you're upgrading them and doing things like that, all these original types. And one of the things that you'll come across often is replacement, well, rubber feet. Now, let me give you some good advice. Yeah, get the genuine ones, because all the others are not quite what they should be. Let me show you. Now, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but this one on this side, see, is lower than the one on this side. And this profile is different than this one. So this is the genuine one, and this is the one that claims it's genuine off eBay. Well, hey, I can tell you why it matters, because first of all, if you want to keep your pedal original, buying cheap crap off eBay isn't the way to do it. And there's a second problem with those. The screws they supply are not necessarily the right ones for your pedal. If you've lost the screws and things, you can get some of these screws crossing underneath and screwing up the cheap metal threads that are in these types of bodies. Just a thought. Also, when you move on to this thing, well, sure enough, it's a genuine one, and you might have one of these already fitted into your pedal. Certainly, I think this one does. I'm not sure about that one. Yeah, that one does too. So, a couple of these here, I've got this fitted. This Hot Pots 2. These two are far different than using this type of controller. This is the more modern thing, as you see later down the line. This one is fitted from 1994 and onwards, or maybe before. I don't have one from in the 80s. Worth noting. That's the other thing. Of course, we are going to move on and play each one of these pedals. This is the 71, 75, 94 and the 2009. So that's going to be coming up next. And then we're going to move on to those other pedals over there, which comprise of one or two different designer pedals, for want of a better word. They're probably all from Dunlop, so don't expect them to sound or be like these, and certainly we're going to have a very close look inside just to see how they've changed on the various models, but don't try and compare any of them with any of these because they're worlds apart. Absolutely. Well, moving on to this new stuff. Oh, they're all exciting, these are, aren't they? Well, you've got the original Crybabies just over there on the back of the table. On these, they've all been sort of modified in one way or another to turn them into beasts of the guy that's supposed to use them. Whether he does use these or he doesn't is another story. It's a great marketing thing if he doesn't use them. Well, let's take a closer look. Okay, well, going from left to right, my left to my right, we've got the Dimebag Crybaby from hell. We've got the Zakk Wylde Crybaby, which some people will also say from hell. Yeah, well, it is. We've got the EVH pedal, and we've got the Jerry Cantrell pedal. And each one of these has got its own little features that they claim the endorser uses, or it's the same as, or you get the idea, you know. I don't think for 1 second that EVH has got his pedal that's got all these bits of tape type of things over it. Not 1 second. But it's great marketing. So let's flip them over and have a look at the backs and then inside. Well, here's a quick shot from the back showing you the various types of covers they've got on there. Some have been updated. This one, I updated the plastic either way. That's original, that's original. I believe that's original, but this one, the Dime one, had seen better days, been around. So let's have a look at each one in turn. Okay, this is the Dime Crybaby, as it says from hell. You notice at the bottom here that this again, designed and manufactured by Dunlop, PO Box, whatever, California, all the rest of it. Now we've got a lot of different features on this pedal in particular. We've got two red LEDs at the bottom that you can't actually see from here, but it's just the way life is. They're down there. And red, as it's boosted, or green, is the part the pedal's on. You've got a little boost selector here on the side, if you can see that. Okay, got the standard type of battery box. We've got two outputs. One says output input and one says output. On this side we've got adapter and input. Well, we'll come back to that. Standard voltage and all the rest. Let's move a bit closer so we can see a bit more about the features. You'll notice here this says input when JP2 is switched to position closest to this jack. We'll come back to that. Moving on to these features, we've got a fine tune. It says clockwise for higher and counterclockwise for lower. We'll demonstrate that later. We've got a variable Q, clockwise for higher, counterclockwise for lower. And we've got a volume clockwise for higher, counterclockwise for lower, so we can do a lot of stuff with that. We've also got this knob on the other side here, which is for the wide range. Clockwise is low and counterclockwise is high. So it's a pedal that can be modified in many ways from the features that it includes, which, you know, I guess if you're Dime, well, he won't be doing that anymore, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll check this one out later. Lastly, notice the CE and ROS compliance all down here. Well, there's an overall shot of the board. It's pretty scary, really. It comes all around here. You've got a hole for the battery, all up here, sort of reminiscent. Then you've got these things up the top and another board over here. Well, what can I say? Yeah, you've got this sort of boost technology down in the bottom. We've got two LEDs, one for green and one for red, and he said when it was on red that it was in boost and when it was on green it was just on. Remember that? Moving up a little bit to this section, yeah, we've got another looks like a phasal. We've got these two funny inputs, which will make sense when we try it later. But everything else is sort of PCB mounted, surface mounted type of technology, nothing like the old pedals. I guess maybe that's because the old pedals, well, would have been harder to do this. This is all cheaper to make, easier to make, it's on a machine, and more often than not the machine will get it right every time. Moving up to the top section, we got those three adjusters that we talked about earlier on this Dimebag pedal, and we've got this other setting switch this side. It's really well made, no doubt about that, but it's not really a Crybaby as we know it, is it? Let's move on to the next one. Now, moving on to the Zakk Wylde pedal. This is a pedal that's, to be honest, it's exceedingly well made. It drives the mains, there's nothing much else on the back here. The model's a ZW45, but when you actually get one of these and you plug it in, you might love it, but I certainly didn't. And it's far away from the sort of regular wah pedal that I would tend to use. I come from the old school stuff, like the first four we had. This one for me wasn't voiced right, and I had to do some work on that to sort of fix it all up and get it where I need it. Now, with a bit of luck, you can see straight away that the Zakk Wylde pedal is more like the old style pedals. That's been tweaked around a little bit, more like the sort of 2004 era, 95 era type of board that's in there. Now, without getting too entwined into this, you can see it's still got the phasal type of inductor. It's got its three transistors and, you know, capacitors and resistors and the rest of it. You've got the mains in and the input and output, and that unusual sort of computer type of connector that connects to the rest of the equipment. However, I did say I did some mods on this one, and I can tell you what those mods were. The R1 resistor was originally 1.5k, and I changed that to 33k. The R5 resistor was 33k, and I changed that to 68k. That gave me a lot of drive on the amp side. I also took on, well no, I didn't take R9, I took R15, sorry, and I changed that from a 68k to a 47k. Just three resistors I changed, and you wouldn't believe the difference in the pedal. Almost anybody could do it. You can see they're back as they were, virtually you could not tell what's been changed and what hasn't. But that's what I did, and I improved the tone, in my opinion, might be not your opinion, for me. I get just in the same way that Eddie did in his, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's have a look at the top control. Well, once again, we've fallen back into the hot pots era. Here it is. I say era, it's current. And there's not a lot to say about that, it's just the modern pedal, really. So, other than the mods on the Zakk Wylde one, which I guess done what did themselves anyway, to turn it into the Zakk Wylde pedal, I've semi-turned it back, not all the way, note. It's almost a standard pedal. It's really well made though, I have to say that, really well made. Probably one of the best made pedals I've got here. Now this is the Eddie Van Halen wah, and to be honest it's supposed to be like a standard wah, you know, the old type that we've been looking at, except that this is Eddie's version, and Eddie's version was really one of the old types that's been modified. There's nothing special on this. I mean, we've got the approvals, of course, we've got an adapter plug, an in and out, and a signature from Eddie, and thanks very much. But we'll take a look closer inside presently actually. Let's have a look at the last one. Well, there's just a quick shot of Eddie's pedal. I really want to zoom in on this one. There's nothing particularly special. You put your battery down here and all the rest of it. So let's zoom a bit closer. Well, looking at the main board, in many ways, again, it's very similar to the original Crybabys. We've got my, well, there, transistors. We've got some capacitors, differing types, and the resistors. And the phasal on this one is classed as an EVH one. Whether it's something special, I don't know, but they don't really tell you that. Anybody could put a cap on there, couldn't they? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But what's important is that this pedal is almost standard. Probably a few little changes inside. A bit like what I did really with the Zakk Wylde one. I changed some of the components slightly. There's no major work involved, and you get a completely different tone or sound. Well, not tone, but drive I was after, and a change of the sweep. On this one, so this is supposed to be a replica of Eddie's pedal, and they really do mean that, exact replica, and I'll show you why presently. Let's move up a bit. Now in the top section of this pedal, look, it's all pretty much the same. You notice it's got the old original thing that they use for pushing this in place. So that was a nice touch. Bearing in mind it's supposed to be like the originals. You'll notice though that it hasn't got the Hot Pots 2, it's got a different one. And this different one was actually developed off Eddie's controller, we'll call it that, so that it's exactly the same. And I'll show you why presently when we go back up top. It's interesting to see. The rest of this is just to do with, from what I can see, LEDs and things like that on the top, just to show it's working or it isn't. That's about it for Eddie's pedal. Nice and simple. Well, I guess some of the best stuff always is. Okay, the Jerry Cantrell Crybaby. Again, it's supposed to be a pretty standard one with just the odd improvement like this here. What's that do? I have no idea until we plug it in. I know as much about this pedal, well, probably as you do, but we're going to hear it later, so we'll soon figure out what it does. So it's got an adapter and in and out, and the rest of it's got gibberish on there by Jerry. Well, he doesn't think it's gibberish, but there you go. It's a JC95 model, they say, still made by Dunlop. It's got the latest type of plastic on it. Let's move on and get inside these things. It's getting boring. Okay, the Jerry Cantrell pedal. Again, we can see that it's pretty standard inside, and you know, it's more of a standardized pedal with a few tweaks. That's how I see it. We've still got the 3 bits and pieces. Let's zoom in a bit closer so we can get a real good view. Now, like I said, it's pretty standard, except there's probably a few resistors changed. Indeed, if you go on the internet and have a look around, you can see how to change one of these standard Crybabies that we looked at earlier into one of these Cantrell ones, or near enough. So you get the tones and things. So we've still got the 3 little transistors. We've still got the rest of the gubbins in here. We've got the input, the voltage input, and the in and the out, and that unusual connector at the top. Strangely this time the phasal has got a D on it. I can't tell you any more about it because they don't tell me. But it says Dunlop manufacturing, all the rest of it. Week 35, 2014, this pedal. Again, it's exactly as you'd expect. We've got the Hot Pots 2, probably. Yeah, it looks like it. And nothing else has changed. We've got this thing probably that changes the overall tone, probably. There's no information about that. We'll find it. I'm back. The modern era wah pedals. Very interesting stuff. Each one modified in its own way. Are they worth the money? Well, we're going to find out. These are going to also be played out there, and see what we think of them. Is it really worth the upgrade or the extra money? Because you can buy, you can buy a Crybaby for, I don't know, in England you can get them for about £80. That's about $100, probably cheaper in America. But some of these go all the way up to like $190 or £185, give or take, in England. So they can be expensive. I just want to single one of them out and show you something. Yeah, this is supposed to be the Eddie Van Halen pedal, and I don't doubt it. It probably is. Well, not quite. It's got the stripes on, but I guess his hasn't. But Dunlop, in their wisdom, they say, took Eddie's pedal that had been modified by somebody over time, and they made this pedal to be near enough an exact replica. Whether Eddie has these little LEDs on the front to tell you what's going on is another story, but this is how far they went. If you remember, when we were looking inside this thing, I pointed out that the controller pot was sort of different than all the others. And it is. Watch this. Now, nothing special about that. Well, there isn't until you take every other one and you find you've got to push them down. See that? Every single one has to be pushed. This one, literally, reacts like a worn out pot. And they went and designed this pot, actually on Eddie's pot, on the measurements, on the, everything about the thing. So it's just an interesting thing to about the lengths that these people will go to replicate someone's pedal. Very interesting. Now, as I've said, we are actually going to play every pedal, probably one after the other, in the order that they were originally shown. That is 1971, 75, 94, 2009, and then Dime, Zakk, Eddie, and Cantrell. Sounds like a plan. So what do I think about the original Crybabies? They're just off camera over there, all four of them in a row. And yeah, interesting. Great pedals. I like my original pedal because I've used it since I bought it. The 75 one's pretty nice as well, but when you move on to those newer ones, well, they're still good, don't get me wrong. Each pedal's got its own vibe, for want of a better word. But those earlier ones really are different, and you'll hear the difference. I don't doubt it for a second. Oh, just one thing on those pedals. The 1971 and 1975 pedal, for the Crybaby logo, you'll notice that the R extends lower than the later ones, and also that the text is thinner on those early Crybabies. On the later ones, it's fatter and a shorter R drop. So worth knowing, because if you're going to go and buy one and somebody claims this and somebody claims that, that's another little feature that I haven't seen notated anywhere, but I'm looking at it across the room.